Part 1. The prophecy letter. My name is Detective Nathan Cross, and I've been investigating homicides for the Boston Police Department for 11 years. I've solved murders using forensics, witness testimony, and good old-fashioned detective work. But I've never had a case where the solution arrived before the crime. That changed on Monday, October 16th, when I received a letter that described a murder in perfect detail, a murder that wouldn't happen for another 48 hours. The envelope arrived in the morning mail, addressed specifically to me. Detective Nathan Cross, Homicide Division, Boston PD. No return address. Standard white envelope, postmarked locally. Inside was a single typed page, written with clinical precision. Detective Cross, on Wednesday, October 18th, at approximately 11:47 p.m. A woman named Jennifer Walsh will be murdered in her apartment at 247 Riverside Drive, Unit 3B. She will be stabbed 7 times with a kitchen knife taken from her own drawer. The killer will enter through the fire escape window, which Ms. Walsh habitually leaves unlocked. The murder will appear to be a robbery gone wrong, but nothing will actually be stolen. Ms. Walsh will die because she discovered information that someone desperately wants kept secret. When you investigate this crime, you will make a critical mistake. You will trust the testimony of her neighbor in Unit 3C, Michael Torres. His alibi will seem airtight, but he is lying. Check the timestamp on his building's security camera footage carefully. You will find it has been edited to show him entering his apartment at 10:30 p.m. when he actually entered at 12:15 a.m. after the murder. This information is being provided to you now, so that you might prevent this death. Whether you choose to act on it or dismiss it as a hoax is your decision. You have 48 hours. Sincerely, someone who knows. I read the letter 3 times, analyzing every word. It was detailed, specific, and included information that no random person should know, like the habitual unlocked window, and the name of a neighbor who hadn't even been mentioned yet because, according to this letter, the crime hadn't happened. My first instinct was to dismiss it as a prank. We get dozens of false tips, conspiracy theories, and attention seekers trying to involve themselves in investigations. But something about this letter felt different. The specificity, the calm tone, the prediction of my own investigative mistake. It read like a genuine warning from someone with actual knowledge. One looked up Jennifer Walsh in our databases. She existed. 32 years old. Worked as a data analyst for a pharmaceutical company. No criminal record. Lived alone at the address mentioned in the letter. I called her apartment. No answer. I left a message asking her to contact me urgently regarding a potential security concern. You got a fortune teller case? My partner, Detective Maria Santos, asked when she saw me studying the letter. Something like that. Someone sent me a detailed description of a murder that supposedly happens in 2 days, including names, addresses, methods, and evidence. She read the letter, frowning. This is specific. Too specific to be random guessing. Either someone is planning this murder and trying to create an alibi by reporting it in advance, or it's an elaborate hoax. Have you contacted the potential victim? Left a message. If she calls back, I'll warn her to secure her apartment and maybe stay somewhere else for a few days. But Maria, look at this part. It predicts a mistake I'll make during the investigation. How could anyone know that unless they're either the killer planning how to fool me, or they're somehow seeing the future, or they've watched you work enough cases to predict your investigative patterns. You do have habits, Nathan. We all do. Maybe someone who knows your methods is setting up a murder to exploit those habits. That was a disturbing thought, that someone had studied me well enough to predict my mistakes. I need to verify everything in this letter. Check if Jennifer Walsh really does leave her fire escape window unlocked. If Michael Torres exists and lives in 3C. If there are security cameras in that building. Over the next hours, I confirmed the basics. Jennifer Walsh did live at 247 Riverside Drive, Unit 3B. Michael Torres lived in Unit 3C. The building had security cameras in the lobby and hallways. I drove to the location and observed from across the street. The fire escape was visible from my position, and at 3 p.m., I saw movement in apartment 3 billion. Someone was home. I decided to approach directly. If this was a real threat, Jennifer Walsh deserved to know. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and knocked on her door. A woman answered, mid-30s, professional appearance, curious expression. "Can I help you?" I showed my badge. "Ms. Walsh, I'm Detective Nathan Cross. I need to talk to you about a potential threat to your safety." Her expression shifted to concern. "A threat? What kind of threat? May I come in?" She led me into a neat, well-organized apartment. Books lined one wall. A laptop sat open on the dining table. Everything spoke of someone orderly and careful, except for one thing: the fire escape window was indeed unlocked, slightly open for ventilation. "Ms. Walsh, have you received any threats recently? Anyone expressing unusual interest in you or your work?" "No, nothing like that." "Why? What's this about?" I decided to be direct but vague. "We received information suggesting you might be in danger. I need you to secure all your windows and doors, vary your routine for the next few days, and consider staying with friends or family if possible, especially on Wednesday night." "Wednesday specifically?" "Detective, you're scaring me. What information did you receive?" "I can't share details of an ongoing investigation, but please take this seriously. Do you keep your fire escape window unlocked regularly?" She glanced at the window, looking embarrassed. "Sometimes, for fresh air. I know I shouldn't, but it's a 3rd floor walk-up and I like the breeze." "Why?" "It's a security risk. Please keep it locked. And if you notice anyone unusual in your building or following you, call 911 immediately." "Can you at least tell me who's threatening me? Is it someone I know?" "We don't have a suspect yet. This is precautionary. Just be careful." I left her my card and walked back down the hallway, passing Unit 3C, Michael Torres' apartment. I knocked, but no one answered. I'd need to come back later to talk to him. That evening, Jennifer Walsh called my office. "Detective Cross, I've been thinking about what you said. I want to know what's really going on. You can't just tell me I'm in danger and not explain why." "Ms. Walsh, I understand your concern. We received information about a potential threat, and I'm taking it seriously even though I can't verify all the details yet. Have you thought about staying somewhere else for a few days? I can't just abandon my apartment based on vague warnings. I have work, responsibilities. If there's a real threat, I need to understand what it is so I can protect myself properly." She had a point. Keeping her in the dark might make her less vigilant rather than more careful. "Someone sent me information suggesting you might be targeted on Wednesday night. The source of this information is unusual, and I'm still verifying its credibility, but the details were specific enough that I felt I needed to warn you." "Who would want to target me?" "I'm a data analyst. I crunch numbers for pharmaceutical trials. It's boring work, not something people kill over." "Has your work involved anything unusual recently? Any discoveries or irregularities in data?" There was a long pause. "Actually, yes. About 3 weeks ago, I found discrepancies in trial data for one of our company's major drug candidates. Numbers that didn't add up. Results that seemed manipulated. I reported it to my supervisor, and he said he'd handle it. But since then, things have been weird at work. People avoiding me, projects being reassigned. I thought I was being paranoid." "What drug was this related to?" "Vitacure 12, a cardiac medication. It's supposed to go to FDA approval next month. If my findings are correct, the efficacy data has been falsified to make the drug look more effective than it actually is. We're talking about a medication that millions of people could be prescribed. If it doesn't work as claimed, people could die." This changed everything. Jennifer Walsh wasn't a random victim, she was a whistleblower who discovered pharmaceutical fraud. And someone wanted to silence her before she could expose it. "Ms. Walsh, this is now a matter of potential corporate crime as well as your personal safety. I need you to document everything you found, make copies, and store them in multiple secure locations. And please, for your own protection, stay somewhere else for the next week. I'll coordinate with my department to provide protection if necessary. You really think someone would kill me over this? According to the information I received, yes. And that information has been accurate about every other detail so far. She agreed to stay with her sister in Cambridge and to compile all her evidence about the data manipulation. But as I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was playing a game with rules I didn't understand. Someone had sent me this letter, knowing exactly how events would unfold. Were they the killer setting up an alibi, a concerned party trying to prevent the murder, or something else entirely? Tuesday came and went without incident. Jennifer Walsh stayed at her sister's place. I posted surveillance on her apartment, monitoring for any suspicious activity. Michael Torres in Unit 3C turned out to be a software engineer who worked from home. I interviewed him briefly, and he seemed ordinary, with no obvious connection to Jennifer or her pharmaceutical company. Wednesday arrived. I coordinated with a tactical unit to have officers positioned near Jennifer Walsh's apartment that evening, ready to respond if anyone attempted to break in through the fire escape. Jennifer had agreed to return to her apartment at 11 p.m., knowing we'd be watching, hoping to catch whoever might come after her. At 11:47 p.m., the exact time mentioned in the letter, nothing happened. The fire escape window remained secure. No one approached the building. Jennifer Walsh was safe, watched over by multiple officers. At midnight, I called off the operation. False alarm, I told the tactical team. Either the threat was a hoax, or our precautions prevented it. But as I was walking back to my car, my phone rang. It was dispatch. Detective Cross, we have a homicide at 247 Riverside Drive, Unit 3B. Officers are on scene. My blood went cold. That's impossible. I just left that building. We had it under surveillance all night. The call came in at 11:52 p.m. Neighbor reported hearing screams. Officers arrived and found the victim deceased. Detective, the victim is Jennifer Walsh. I ran back to the building, my mind racing. How could this have happened? We'd been watching the apartment. Jennifer had been there under protection. Unless. I burst into apartment 3B. Jennifer Walsh lay on the floor, exactly as described in the letter. 7 stab wounds. Kitchen knife from her own drawer. The fire escape window was closed and locked. We'd made sure of that, but she was dead anyway. The medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Chang, was already examining the body. Time of death, approximately 11:45 to 11:50 p.m. Multiple stab wounds. Defensive wounds on her hands, suggesting she fought her attacker. This is brutal. But how? We were watching this apartment. No one entered through the fire escape. No one came through the door. How did the killer get in? One of the officers pulled me aside. Detective, there's something you need to see. The neighbor in 3C, Michael Torres, says he heard the attack. Says he was returning home at 10:30 p.m. and everything was quiet. We checked the building security footage. He's right. The cameras show him entering at 10:30. The letter had predicted exactly this. Michael Torres would provide an alibi that seemed airtight, but the security footage would be edited. I grabbed the security team and demanded access to their system immediately. I need to see the raw footage, not just the feed. I need to check for any signs of tampering or editing. The building's security manager pulled up the footage. At first glance, it looked clean. Michael Torres entering the building at 10:28 p.m., taking the elevator to the 3rd floor, entering his apartment. But I noticed something the letter had warned about. The timestamp had a slight jump, a fraction of a second skip that suggested editing. Enhance this section. I want to see if there's a break in the timestamp continuity. The technical analysis confirmed it. The footage had been manipulated. The timestamp showed 10:28 p.m., but the actual entry time, based on analysis of shadows and lighting patterns, was closer to 12:15 a.m. exactly as the letter had predicted. Michael Torres had entered after the murder, not before. We arrested Torres within the hour. In his apartment, we found Jennifer Walsh's blood on his clothing, hidden in his laundry basket. Under interrogation, he confessed he'd been paid by executives at the pharmaceutical company to silence Jennifer before she could expose their fraud. He'd edited the security footage in advance, creating his fake alibi, then killed her after we'd called off our surveillance. The case was solved, but it shouldn't have been possible to solve it this way with a letter that predicted every detail before the crime happened. And then, the morning after Jennifer Walsh's murder, I received a second letter. Detective Cross, you have now witnessed the accuracy of my predictions. Jennifer Walsh died exactly as I described, and you caught Michael Torres using the evidence I provided about the edited security footage. But you must be wondering how I knew all this before it happened. The answer is simpler than you think, and more disturbing. I didn't predict the future. I remembered it. You see, detective, you're operating under an assumption that time moves in only one direction. But what if I told you that Jennifer Walsh wrote these letters? Not Jennifer Walsh as she existed before her death, but Jennifer Walsh as she exists after, in a state where past and future are accessible simultaneously. The information I'm providing isn't prophecy, it's memory. Jennifer Walsh is reaching back through time to solve her own murder, using knowledge that only becomes available after her death. And now, Detective Cross, you need to understand something crucial. You're not investigating a murder. You're participating in a temporal loop that has already happened and is still happening, and will happen again. Every action you take to solve this case has already been taken. Every decision you make has already been made. You're not preventing Jennifer's death, you're ensuring it happens exactly as it must, so that she can send these letters and close the loop. Think carefully about what this means, and expect my next letter soon. There are more murders to solve, more loops to close, more victims reaching back through time to catch their own killers. Welcome to Temporal Investigation, Detective Cross. Nothing will ever be the same. I stared at the letter, my hands trembling. Jennifer Walsh had written these letters after her death, somehow sending information back through time to solve her own murder. If that was true, then reality itself was far stranger and more terrifying than I'd ever imagined. And I was about to become part of something that defied every law of physics and logic I'd ever known. Part 2. The loop closes. I spent 3 days analyzing the second letter, trying to convince myself it was a hoax, but every detail from the first letter had been accurate. Jennifer Walsh had died exactly as predicted. Michael Torres had been arrested exactly as described. The edited security footage, the corporate conspiracy, every element had aligned perfectly with information that shouldn't have existed. Before the crime occurred, I visited Dr. Alan Park, a theoretical physicist at MIT who specialized in temporal mechanics and causality. I showed him the letters without explaining their context. This is interesting, he said, reading carefully. Whoever wrote this understands closed temporal loops, a concept in physics, where information or matter travels backward in time, but in doing so, ensures the conditions that caused it to travel backward in the first place. It's theoretically possible under certain interpretations of quantum mechanics and general relativity. How would someone send information back in time? That's the trillion-dollar question. Most theories involve quantum entanglement, closed time-like curves, or exotic matter with negative energy. But even if it's theoretically possible, we've never observed it happening. The universe seems to prevent paradoxes through various mechanisms. Unless, he paused, thinking, unless what? Unless the information isn't really traveling backward. What if it's traveling forward, but through a consciousness that exists outside normal temporal flow? Imagine if someone's awareness could persist after death, not in a supernatural sense, but as a quantum information pattern. If that consciousness could observe events after death, and then influence events before death, through some quantum mechanism, it might create exactly the kind of loop described in these letters. You're saying Jennifer Walsh might still be conscious after death, able to observe her murder investigation and send information back to before she died. I'm saying that if consciousness is a quantum phenomenon which some researchers believe, then it might not be entirely bound by conventional time. A person's awareness might be able to exist in a state where past, present, and future are accessible simultaneously, especially at the moment of death, when quantum coherence breaks down. I left his office more disturbed than enlightened. The idea that Jennifer Walsh's consciousness might somehow persist after death, observing her own murder investigation and sending information back to prevent or solve it, was both fascinating and horrifying. But 3 days after the second letter arrived, I received a third, and this one made everything worse. Detective Cross, by now you've consulted with physicists, trying to understand how these letters are possible. Good. You're beginning to accept that conventional reality doesn't explain what you're experiencing. Now I need to tell you something that will be difficult to accept. I'm not Jennifer Walsh. Or rather, I am not only Jennifer Walsh. I am every victim whose murder creates a temporal loop strong enough to allow consciousness to persist and reach backward. Jennifer Walsh was the first you experienced, but there have been others. Check your closed case files from the past 2 years. Look for murders where evidence appeared mysteriously, where key information arrived anonymously at exactly the right time, where cases solved themselves with unusual efficiency. Those were all temporal loops. Victims sending information back to catch their killers. And now, detective, you need to know the most disturbing truth. You're part of the loop, not as an investigator, but as a victim. On November 3rd, 11 days from now, you will be murdered, shot twice in the chest in the parking garage of your apartment building. The killer will be someone you trust, someone close to your investigation. I'm telling you this now because your death creates a temporal loop that allows you to send information back to yourself. This letter you're reading, you wrote it. After you die, your consciousness will observe your own murder investigation, and you'll send this information back to warn yourself. But here's the paradox. You can't prevent your death. If you try to avoid the parking garage on November 3rd, events will conspire to bring you there anyway. If you try to change your routine, circumstance will force you back on track. Because your death has to happen exactly as it happens for you to send this warning backward. You're trapped in a loop, detective, and the only way to survive is to understand the loop completely and find the one action that allows you to both die and not die simultaneously. You have 11 days. Use them wisely. My hands shook as I read the letter. This wasn't about Jennifer Walsh anymore. This was about me. My own death, predicted with the same accuracy that had predicted hers. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't afford to ignore it either. I pulled my closed case files from the past 2 years, looking for the pattern the letter described, and I found it. 7 cases where key evidence had arrived anonymously at crucial moments. A witness statement that appeared in my mailbox with no return address. Security footage that was mysteriously uploaded to our server, showing a suspect at the crime scene. A confession letter from a killer who'd left no other trace. All of them had seemed like lucky breaks at the time. Anonymous tips from concerned citizens. But looking back now, the information was too precise, too perfectly timed. These weren't tips, they were messages from the future, sent by victims observing their own murder investigations. 7 cases in 2 years, I told Detective Santos. 7 murders that solved themselves with suspiciously accurate anonymous information. Maria, I think we've been investigating temporal loops without realizing it. She looked at me with concern. Nathan, you've been obsessing over these letters. Maybe you need to step back, take some time off, look at the evidence. I pulled up the case files, showing her the pattern. Every one of these cases had information that arrived before it should have existed. Descriptions of crime scenes before we'd processed them. Details about murder weapons before they were found. It's all there if you know what to look for. She studied the files, her skepticism gradually shifting to unease. Assuming you're right, which is a big assumption, what does this mean? Are we supposed to start treating murder investigations as time travel cases? It means the letter is right about something else. It predicted I'd die on November 3rd. And if the pattern holds, If victims really can send information back after their deaths, then I need to figure out how to break the loop before it closes around me. You're talking about preventing your own murder using information from your own future consciousness. Nathan, that's insane. Is it? We solved Jennifer Walsh's murder using information that couldn't have existed before she died. We arrested Michael Torres because a letter told us to check security footage for editing. That information came from somewhere, Maria. And if it came from Jennifer Walsh after her death, then why couldn't similar information come from me after mine? She didn't have an answer for that. I spent the next 11 days analyzing every detail of the prediction. November 3rd, parking garage. Shot twice in the chest. Killed by someone I trust. I varied my routine, avoided the parking garage, stayed with different friends each night. But as the date approached, circumstances kept pushing me back toward the predicted outcome. My car broke down, forcing me to use the parking garage. A case required me to work late on November 3rd. A witness I needed to interview insisted on meeting near my apartment building. Every attempt to avoid the scenario somehow reinforced it. On November 3rd, I parked in a different section of the garage, carried my weapon ready, and stayed hyper-alert. But at 9:47 p.m., as I was walking to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Detective Maria Santos, my partner, holding a gun pointed at my chest. "Maria, what are you doing?" "I'm sorry, Nathan, but you know too much. The temporal loop project, you were never supposed to find out about it. We've been running consciousness experiments on murder victims, studying how awareness persists after death and can influence past events. It's the most important research ever conducted. But you started connecting the cases, understanding the pattern. I can't let you expose it. You're part of this. You've been killing people to study temporal loops, not killing randomly. We select subjects whose murders will create strong temporal resonance, people with unfinished business, urgent information, reasons to reach back through time. Jennifer Walsh was perfect. And you, Nathan, you're even better. A detective investigating his own murder, with full knowledge of temporal mechanics. The loop you'll create will be unprecedented." She fired twice. I felt the bullets impact my chest, felt myself falling. As my vision dimmed, I experienced something impossible. I was simultaneously dying and watching myself die. My consciousness was splitting, existing into states. The dying body in the parking garage, and an awareness that persisted after. Observing events from outside normal time. And in that state, I understood. The letters had been right. I could see my own murder investigation. Watch as other detectives found my body. Hear them discussing suspects. I could see Maria Santos being questioned and released. Her alibi carefully constructed. I could see the case going cold. But I could also see the moments, weeks after my death, when one detective, someone I trained, someone who trusted my instincts, would receive a letter. A letter with details about my murder that shouldn't be known. A letter that I was writing in this impossible state between life and death. I wrote the letter, though I had no hands to write with. I sent it backward through time, though I had no means to send it. In death, consciousness became something else: information, pattern, quantum possibility that could influence events retroactively. But I also saw something Maria Santos hadn't anticipated. By killing me to protect her temporal loop research, she'd created a loop powerful enough to expose it. My death didn't silence the investigation, it ensured it. Because the detective who received my letter would investigate not just my murder, but the pattern of 7 other murders, the temporal loop project. Everything Maria had tried to hide, in trying to close the loop, she'd opened it wider than ever. And as my consciousness finally dissolved into whatever comes after death, I understood the final truth about temporal loops. They can't be controlled. They can only be experienced, observed, and sometimes, if you're lucky, understood. The letter arrived at Boston PD on November 15th, addressed to Detective James Chen, who'd worked under my supervision for 5 years. It described my murder in perfect detail, predicted Maria Santos's involvement, and provided evidence that would lead to her arrest and the exposure of the illegal temporal consciousness research project. The loop closed. Justice was served, and somewhere in the quantum foam of spacetime, the consciousness that had been Nathan Cross finally rested, knowing that even in death, the truth had found its way back to life. The end.